Night with Erick Erickson, nationally syndicated radio host in Georgia, author of the best conservative morning newsletter called Show Notes. Mr. Erickson, always good to see you. If Trump turns on Putin, does MAGA go with him?
I think absolutely. The question is, does he? And part of the problem here is that there are competing voices in the White House. J.D. Vance, when he was coming back from Europe a week or so ago, said that if Putin doesn't want peace, maybe it's time for us to wash our hands of the whole thing. And I think the Russians interpret this as instead of trying to side with Ukraine, the U.S. will just walk away. And that gives Russia exactly what it wants. And there are voices in the White House who do want to give Putin what he wants and walk away from Ukraine altogether. So the question is, who does he listen to? Who's the last one in the room? Marco Rubio, of course, behind the scenes privately does wish to take on the Russians and allow Ukraine, even if it's allowing the Europeans to buy our weapons and then convey them to the Ukrainians so it doesn't cost us a penny. I think that's probably the preferable strategy.
My understanding of the situation is the reason we are seeing Trump starting to stand up to Putin and not give Putin everything he wants is because Trump was convinced that if you have tanks rolling into Kyiv, he will look like Joe Biden did with the withdrawal of Afghanistan, weak, feeble, and it will cripple the next 3 years. That may be true towards the center of America. Is MAGA in that place right now?
I don't think all of MAGA is. Some of it is. MAGA's never been completely sold on siding with Russia. The most vocal elements have. But it certainly would look bad if Ukraine falls with Donald Trump in charge of the United States. Particularly, we can't forget the mineral deal. He just negotiated this deal. He was given lots of praise by MAGA for getting a great deal out of Ukraine. And now to let it be collapsed and for China and Russia to get those minerals would actually be a bad look.
Right, and that's something that Trump is always nervous about. Senator Lindsey Graham has been outspoken on this. The smartest analysis I ever heard of Lindsey Graham is that he is a lagging indicator. If you want to know where the wind is going and has been, just look to Lindsey Graham. Same old from Putin's Russia. Escalate to de-escalate, drag it out, hoping others lose interest. There's a new sheriff in town. The old playbook won't work this time. Is he channeling something?
I do kind of think so. And listen, you've got to understand as well, the Senate Republicans are decidedly on Ukraine's side. There is a minority that wants out of it or is pro-Russia, but the bulk of the Senate Republicans are very much on Ukraine's side, and they're very influential with Trump. The Armed Services Committee and the Foreign Affairs Committee, all very much against Russia right now.
Yeah, it's interesting to see this change, and I think you rightly point out, Wall Street Journal, time for a GOP Senate revolt on sanctions against Putin. We were told over and over again by the Biden administration that the toughest sanctions possible were put on Vladimir Putin. They were doing everything they possibly could. What is it that Trump, Senate Republicans have to take on Vladimir Putin that Joe Biden was unwilling to do?
You know, Joe Biden actually was unwilling to deal with nuclear sales from Russia. He was unwilling to deal with all the oil sales from Russia. He allowed a lot of stuff to slide, including natural gas sales to Europe. He didn't want to use American natural gas to supply Europe. The president actually, if he looks at this as a financial transaction, could actually benefit American companies greatly just by the sale of natural gas and oil to Europe and get them out from under the necessity of depending on Russia.
Yeah, and also you say to other countries, you say to India, you say to China, a decision to do business with Russia is a decision not to do business with the United States. Take your pick. This change has happened pretty rapidly over the past, say, 7 or 8 days, but not maybe unexpectedly. About a month ago, Bill O'Reilly, with his special 100 Days of Trump, had this to say. Take a listen.
Trump wants to believe that Putin is a reasonable man.
And Putin's taking advantage of that.
Okay? Because Putin's evil. I don't think Putin respects any human being on this planet. He'd kill you and me and Trump like that if it served his interest. But Trump wants to believe that he can reason with Putin to stop this mass murder, which leads nowhere, in Ukraine. And Putin was leading him on to say, yeah, I'll be reasonable. But so far has not.
This is a point of real failure for Donald Trump. Bill O'Reilly nodding along if you couldn't see it. In terms of what Donald Trump cares about, above all, it is being seen as a chump or a failure Therefore, even if you have the J.D. Vance wing of saying we should just walk away from that, from Ukraine, I don't think that works for Trump's matrix, does it?
I don't think it does, particularly for, as you mentioned earlier, the optics of if Ukraine were to fall to Russia, the United States, Donald Trump would get the blame. He doesn't want a foreign policy disaster on his hands because it would have a cascading effect through Europe with just the humanitarian refugee crisis. I mean, what Donald Trump needs to understand is that Vladimir Putin, translated into English, is Letitia James, and he needs to approach the dictator of Russia like he does the Attorney General of New York and just take him on.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.